Hi, this is Hillary Burns. My show, The Getting Real with Hillary Show, is dedicated to you. This show is meant to inspire you and to have other guests on who have a story, who might have been stuck, to inspire you that you can also get unstuck and create a life you love. That we can all be free, we don't have to feel alone, and we don't have to feel that there's something wrong with us. That's my message, and I hope you'll join and tune in for some exciting adventures and interviews. So hi, this is Hillary Burns, and welcome to the Getting Real with Hillary show, where we say what can't be said and the AAA formula for freedom, which is awareness, acceptance, and action. And today, I am excited to have Lindsey Otsier on. Lindsey is a mother, a corporate executive, and a social media guru, and as well runs a career coaching program called Max Potential that can be found at maxpotential.live. And we'll be talking more about that at the end. But for now, Lindsey's going to tell us an inspiring story that changes lives well, I'll let her tell you what she's going to talk about today. So welcome, Lindsey. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I was really excited to hear about your podcast and sounded like a great opportunity for us to partner. So thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. Lindsey has helped me with my newsletter on Constant Contact. She's the one that made the shell, which I've been filling in, I think, 104 times so far. So thank you, Lindsey.
You're welcome. And congrats on hitting 100 newsletters. That's a lot of great work.
So if you need a newsletter, you can contact Lindsey as well. She's great.
That's right.
She really knows Constant Contact and maybe some other ones as well, right? Probably. Yeah. All right. Awesome. All right. So let's get to the good stuff here. Tell us about what you want to talk about today, Lindsey.
Yeah. So I kind of figured for the topic of getting unstuck, I went through a divorce about 5 years ago, and it for me was definitely a transformational time in my life. I had married my high school sweetheart, and we had a great run for a while. And then unfortunately, things started to go south, and I found myself with a 6-month-old baby, getting divorced, in a house with a mortgage that I could not afford on my own. And I ended up with all those pieces. And it was a pretty low moment in my life. You know, I had really thought that this person I would be with for the end of time, but it was really just clear with his struggles that wasn't great for a kid. So I had to make some tough choices in my life. And I had a good job. I had a good job at the time, which was one of my saving graces, I think, in terms of being able to rebuild my life, because I had at least a good baseline to work off of. I know not as many women are always, who end up in my position have that. So that was pretty lucky, but it ended up catapulting me into, I had the real reality of having to figure out a financial situation for me and my daughter, which really kind of pushed me to go beyond my comfort zones and try a lot of new things. So when my marriage was clear to me that, I'd filed for divorce, and I kind of had this moment of like, I'm going to be open to whatever the universe wants to throw my way. I'm going to try new things. I'm going to meet new people. Specifically around dating, I was like, I'm just going to go on all sorts of dates because this didn't work out so hot. So
hey, Lindsey,
I don't know necessarily.
I just have to go back. So when you said went south, that's where I'm stuck. Okay, you married your high school sweetheart, you're having a baby, like what the heck happened, if you're willing to tell us, because that's what I'm curious about.
Yeah. So it's, addiction. So he definitely had some struggles with, and still does struggle with alcohol. And, it was, when you're young and you're partying and you're all out in college, it seemed normal. And then it's kind of like, as the years go on, more and more of your friends start cutting back, but then some don't. And then unfortunately, in my case, it became really clear that it was a massive struggle for him when we had the baby. And, I think it really was like, okay, we can't be, partying now. And then it didn't, really necessarily stop for him. And that's just not an environment that I wanted. It wasn't good for me. It wasn't good for my daughter. So that was for me, it took me a while to process and get over it, because we had been, best buddies for a very long time. And, I started dating him when I was 16. So I was, this was someone I'd been with by the time I had my daughter at 30, most of my life, and then having to make that decision. But yeah, it was the addiction piece that really kind of was the break in our relationship.
And when did you, so you're partying, everything's fine, everyone's drinking, and then all of a sudden you're just kind of noticing, like, did you notice it right away? Did you have an awakening one moment? I mean, was it like gradual? Like, did you talk to him about it? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was gradual. I would say, I mean, there would definitely be the off occasion night where like, I was like, like, that's not good. Like, we're all partying and he's overserved again and not everybody else is. So there was kind of that undertone, but it wasn't, I think when I finally got pregnant and I just stopped drinking altogether, obviously, it did also, open my eyes a bit. And I think that switch in mindset of like things you were maybe okay to excuse, like when there isn't a kid, it really started to rub on me. And it was really being, saying, we'd always agreed, like, we'd stop partying when we had a kid and all those types of things. And then it wasn't happening. We were talking about it. We were going to therapy and like, it still wasn't happening. And of course my belly's getting bigger and bigger. So it's just getting more and more, acute. And then I was like, all right, like I kind of set a deadline, which you never should set a deadline on another person. But I was like, okay, by the time I have this baby, we need to have this sorted out. We're going to be good. We're going to be all good. It's all going to be sorted. And it wasn't. And then it seemed to be even the more pressure of having, a baby in the house, which just kind of like was the nail in the coffin. And it was, I think specifically the breaking point for me was just seeing my kid. And then seeing the reflection of that and seeing it together, it was like, okay, I could accept that in my life, but I just had this aha moment of like I can't have this. So I had to make the difficult choice. So
yeah. So you had a newborn.
Yeah.
And you're making this difficult choice.
Yeah. I remember calling a lawyer at 3 months and she was like, this is so sad. And like, I started to cry and I didn't call back again for like another 6 months because I was like, I don't want it to be true either, right? I was like, I'd married my high school sweetheart. We were like this fun couple for years. We traveled and now all of a sudden everything was like unraveling. And, I do think there was probably a bit of like postpartum there for me, and then like me and the hormones and everything. But that cocktail and combination was really what, kind of tipped it over.
And did he say like, give me another chance, I'll stop, or did he never say that?
Yeah, definitely. He definitely tried. There was a period of sobriety. He definitely was, working to address it. And there are, I have friends who have been in similar situations who have stayed, with that. He couldn't quite kick it. So it was just for me, I just didn't want that level of uncertainty. Because actually when we finally did file for divorce, we was actually sober at the time, which was interesting. So, but it was, if you're around the community of addicts, there's people that, kind of address their underlying issues that kind of brought them to that point is to begin with.
Right.
And then there's people that don't necessarily. And that's kind of when I started realizing I was like, okay, it's the addiction and these unresolved things that need to get worked out and you have to want to do the work. Right. And I remember at the 6 months walking into an Al-Anon meeting and saying, I will do something different. I want to make a change. And he and I weren't kind of aligned on that kind of epiphany moment in time. So.
Wow. And is he still part of the baby's life? Or
not really. Not very much. So it was,
it was tough choices. Okay. So now we're back. You get divorced. You got a teeny baby.
Yeah. So it was like, okay, I made this big decision. I get through all this. And then you're like on the other side of it. Like I was working full time in Stanford and I was like, oh my God, how am I going to keep it
And
together?
who was watching the baby then?
She was in daycare. And then I did have the support of both sets of grandparents. They were very supportive. They would help take her all the time for me. And, I was actually traveling for work while this was all happening, which was another component where, it was just thing upon thing. So there was, right after it was, even though I'd gotten through that emotional struggle piece with him, like there was still a lot of like, I wasn't in a good place, period. I didn't have, it drained all my finances. That mortgage I had was way beyond what I could pay by myself with the daycare and everything. So it was some pretty it was pretty scary for me at times. It's like not having that level of, support and comfort and being a new mom and trying to make it all work. And that's where I feel like I had to dig deep and say, okay, like what I did did not work out right. There's obviously some things in, my decision-making and how I came about life that brought me to this. Right. And I really need to challenge myself to step out of my comfort zone and do things differently. And that's when I got into a lot of meditation. I went to Al-Anon. I, had a lot of therapy. Like I mentioned before too, like I met a lot of new people and I started becoming open and I met some really fantastic people that helped me. It was kind of interesting. Like in the beginning, there was like that pause where it's like, okay, I'm done with the divorce, but I don't have anything new necessarily, but life kind of comes up to meet you. Right. So I started, my neighbor ended up being an amazing close friend who supported me. We had a kid a day apart. We didn't even know. So I was over there for like dinners every day. And now they're like family to me. And it's kind of a nice thing. And then I specifically did meet my mentor and my boyfriend from today. I met him and he was a very great coach around my career. So I also took a lot of chances in terms of moving jobs. So he encouraged me to find a work from home job, this is pre-pandemic. So it wasn't very common. And, I was like, this is impossible to be able to be paid what I'm making and be remote. And he was like, just keep going. And I ended up landing a remote job, making more money than what I was currently making and having a much greater flexibility. And it was a massive, I think I had a 2-year-old at the time. So it was a massive game changer for me to take a lot of that pressure off of, the commute and
travel.
Yeah. And then I ended up moving 2 more times for my jobs in COVID. Largely because of, there's a lot of uncertainty, but each job was an improvement to my career step, but I took a little bit more risk than I might have otherwise because I had this real drive in my belly about like being able to support my kid in a way that would be what she deserved. It's a bit of a first world problem. I grew up in a nice affluent area and my vision for my daughter was not to just survive on a paycheck to paycheck as a single mom. It was, I want you to thrive and go to camps and go to ballet and like do all those things. But that meant that I was going to have to fund that myself. Right. So it challenged me to really take some more risks and get out of my comfort zone and have to grow up a bit more, I think. So, and now I've come to a point, I just got back from a month at the beach with my daughter that I paid for. And it's a beautiful beach area. And I think that, to me, especially I was reflecting on the beach this year. It's like, I went from not being able to necessarily pay all my bills to literally now I'm affording a beautiful beach vacation with my daughter. And I'm working on all sorts of projects and my career is going really well at the company that I'm working for. So.
And how old is she now?
She is 6.5.
6.5. Wow. So you turned things around. Now, how were his parents when they were watching the baby? Were they supportive of your decision?
They were really supportive of the decision. So they were an unbelievable support to me through it. And, I was honest and open with them the entire process. They had been my family since I was 16 and, we're still pretty close, I would say. So they're still involved in my daughter's life. And I think it's really, really important, but I think it's a tribute both to them and to me that, we went through all of that and,
yeah,
we're
they
still
didn't take his side, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's sad. It's sad for him, but I think when you look at the reality of the situation, I always thought too that she could learn about him through them. So
Yeah.
it was always important to me to like keep that connection alive. And then they were very, especially after they really had my back, especially in the beginning too, like when I was working in a different part of the state, like, if I needed to do a last minute babysitting, go take her to a doctor, they would step. So,
Wow. Wow.
yeah, I think pretty unusual. I don't know if that level of support, is typical, in terms of the divorce situations. So,
Yeah, I think you never know, but that's great. Given that you were divorcing their son, that they were stayed in, they didn't just, I've heard of families that wouldn't have supported, so that's really cool.
Yeah, I remember being in the divorce court, and it was the three of us afterwards, and I just started to bawl my eyes out because I never, I didn't want to get divorced. It kind of I felt like my hand got pulled there, but she came and gave me a big hug. And she was like, "It's gonna be okay," and I was just, I still to this day remember that moment being like, that's pretty beautiful thing, I think.
So she was there. The mom was there.
Yes, she was there that day.
So yeah, so it's, you make it sound like this was so easy. I know it wasn't, but yeah. So what do you think helped you get, all of a sudden you got this newborn, you got this big mortgage, you didn't stop, obviously. You kept going. Something had you keep going and figure it out, right? What do you think that was?
I mean, I really think it was my daughter, like I really think being a mom just really like, I didn't want her to grow up with that uncertainty. So when I was growing up, my mom had a lot of health issues, like back surgeries and different things. And I had grown up like that. So where, there'd be great periods, but then there'd be periods of time where she'd be very sick and in the hospital and various different things. And I guess for me, it just, when I saw her and my own baby and then seeing not the exact same thing happen, but like a similar feel of like that inconsistency from the person that you love at times, it really struck a chord. And I just was like, it just got it fire in me that I was just like, I need to fix this. Like, I need to do better. And I thought I had, in a way, like we had been, he was a very faithful, kind man. Like it was for, when it was good, it was good. So yeah. I kind of thought
So the inconsistency was in his behavior. Sometimes he was that way and sometimes he was not.
Yeah.
Like if he was drinking, he wasn't that guy.
He wasn't available a lot.
Yeah.
You
didn't know when
you didn't know
he was going to be which. So that was like your mother, right?
Yeah.
Like who we got today, right?
Yep. Exactly. And it was like, you'd have plans, you get all excited, and then he'd be, too hungover to go. You'd be like, okay. Or, and sometimes it was small things, but sometimes it was bigger things. It's like, I remember one time we had a snow day and, it was a party day for him and I had the baby and I was working full time. And I'm like, I really needed you to like, not have a party with yourself today, like, wow. And I do remember standing there with a baby and like trying to do my calls and being like, this is just not going to work. And
he was just not like, what was he doing? He was watching TV or whatever, like in another room, like not even.
And drinking and just hanging out. And then when you see that too, is also like, I can't just leave this kid here now,
Right.
So it was like, I gotta, once I figured out that's what was going on, it was like, okay. So, which was sad because I know in his heart, he had always wanted to be a dad. So I've always tried to like tread lightly on it because, I think there's such a stigma around mental illness and addiction in this country.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not treated very kindly, and I think that it is a real struggle for some people. And, when you kind of I don't want it to demonize, like be like, oh, it's, all bad, he struggled. So and I watch it and I have a lot of compassion for that, I guess is my point, and for his journey. It just, for me, when I'm looking at it from my lens, it was, unmanageable for me towards the end there.
Yeah. So. Okay. So there you are. Your baby gives you motivation. You want it consistent. And so you said that the boyfriend, do you still have the boyfriend?
Mm-hmm.
So the same one that was helping you with the career?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So he kind of gave you the strength to reach out and move. So what kind of jobs were these where you could just keep going to better and better jobs? Like what were you doing?
I do recruitment marketing and employer branding. So it's helping companies recruit talent, which is a role that can be relatively remote depending, on the level of leadership. This is a lot of social media, digital marketing, websites, job boards, stuff like that. So a lot of the work lends it to being, can be remote because it can be done online. I do lead a team. So when you have teams, I've led teams on and off, that part you do want to have some in-office presence, but I think having that flexibility on a regular basis, as a mom has been like a game changer. So, it's made it just a lot easier to be able to breathe and to do those things. So.
And you were an employee of the companies. You weren't a freelancer, right? So you didn't have to worry about the project ending. So
I had benefits.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And had COVID not happened, I probably may not have either have moved as many times. There were a lot of shifts in business and a lot of things went down. So I made some choices to make changes that, in other environments I may not have either. But I think too, it was also an opportunity in ways, like I took a chance on a new company in the middle of the pandemic. And that was partly from, I feel like my boyfriend was like, go after it, and like chase your dreams and make more money and like really try to keep going and don't, I feel like, recoil back, in fear, which is kind of probably one of the bigger changes that happened to me after my divorce was like, once you've like lost something that really you care about that you couldn't fix, my perspective changed a bit. I was like, I should go for these things, because you can't get it back, so.
Right. And what's the worst case, I guess, if it didn't work out, you'd find something else. But yes, a lot of people hold on to what they got and they don't.
Yeah.
Reach out.
And they kind of stagnate too.
Yeah.
I think that was, for me, I showed myself that I could do it. I'm like, if I can get it together with this small child, pay off, I am debt free, like I literally went from being in debt, mortgage over my head, small child, good job, but not a job enough to pay for all that. Right.
And did you have to move or did you?
I did.
Keep that house.
Okay. And I wanted to move anyway. Yeah. I wanted to clear the slate and, home ownership as a single mom is not recommended. So I got a beautiful condo where a guy comes and shovels the walkway and mows the lawn and I can, focus on my career and my kid and just enjoy my time more. So,
smart. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And, when you switch these jobs, did you know how to do the next thing or did you grow into it? Like, were you confident in your abilities? Were you terrified? Like
terrified. Like, what do I do? What do I think I am? Do I think I'm this good? Right. I was like, who is this? What do you think you're doing? And that was, I got to tell you, that was like having a mentor, my boyfriend just happens to kind of be both, but like having that person in your corner saying like, of course you do. He's like, you will figure it out. You will rise to the challenges. And he's like, I will help you too. Cause he had a lot of great experience. So he was able to, at times I'd ask him for advice and he'd help me through, but at the end of the day, it was still me executing on it. Like
now, yeah. So when you went to the interviews, did you have to like pretend you could do it? Or did you just sell yourself and say, I can learn, Like,
Well, I would say it was a lot of like believing in the skills that I did have, right? Like I feel like with women, this comes up a lot, this tendency to undervalue what we
yes.
do and what it is.
Uh-huh.
I had worked at a really great company for many years and I'd learned so much about, process and programs and strategies. And, it was like they ask you these things and I had done them. So it's a matter of like doing them on a, bigger scale or a global scale or in a different context. And, there's always some sort of learning curve. And there was one job that had a portion of it, which was maybe not as strong a skill set for me. And, it was like, I've used this formula I've learned at this company around strategy to roll out all sorts of things. So I can do that for this too. So it's if you use, I figured out like if you, if you're able to understand the problem and then figure out a potential solution and then run a pilot, like there's a formula to it that you can apply to really any business challenge. So I think for me, it was like having the faith in myself that I could continually over and over again, deliver on that. Right. As, being confident in my abilities. And, I think I took a bet on myself, so.
And would you say you're confident now?
More confident.
Still terrified? No.
I still get terrified, but I always like to say, like, if I'm not terrifying myself on some sort of a regular basis, I'm not growing. And I don't want to, there's always that temptation to like sink back. Right. Yes. And like stay where you're comfortable. And, I think as I get further away from my divorce, sometimes I feel like I can see myself, I'm like, I have to be conscious of not getting complacent and, kind of wrestling on my laurels because it was, that was a massive motivator, right? Like having to come out and I just was like determined as heck. I don't know. I was like, I'm going to prove you can be a single mom and do this. Like, I just was like, I'm doing it. I don't care. I prove everybody that like women can do this too. I would not recommend this experience. It was a great weight loss program. But I think that, that was like just a real fire for me. And now that I've gotten more steady, it's, how do you continue to thrive and continue to up level, when things are more calm and you not have quite such a passion for something.
Well, it seems like, in our final few minutes that we could go to the next thing you're doing if you want, which is the max potential. And would you say that's another step up for you to be doing this in addition to everything else you're doing?
Yes. Yeah.
And tell us a little bit about that in our last couple minutes.
Flew by.
Yeah, I know.
So I think one of the things that has come out for me after going through all this is wanting to give back to people and seeing. So I also read a ton of books around self-improvement and, how to better run your life. And I really started implementing a lot of those things like good habits and drinking your water and working out, like things we all know, but I feel like, and, I think some of my friends can attest to it. Like I've gotten much healthier and, I've always been a bit of a health nut, but it went to like another level, my career went to another level. And I feel like it's been, now that I'm here, it's like so great to be in a position where you're, earning well and feeling well and doing well, that I want to give that back to other women, because there were a lot of hands that reached out to me in my low point. There were a lot of people that had my back that I was like, remember at the time I had no money, I wasn't bringing wine bottles over for dinner. I was just showing up with my baby. And, I made a mental note of all those people that just, were so kind to me and never made me feel lesser than or anything like that. I was like, I will remember this. And maybe, you can't always necessarily give it directly back, but you can give it back in general. So, this idea came up around, how about putting together a program that pulls some of these things together to help people maximize their potential too. And that could be, I think career is one where I really have a lot of expertise between working in the recruiting field and personally having, managed my career with my mentor and things like that. So basically, it's a package that pulls that all together and helps people identify what they want their next step to be, and then steps for how to get there.
Wow.
So it's called Max Potential.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Lindsey, I can't believe we're out of time, but this was great. It was very inspiring. And, if any of you are out there and you want to make your next career move, definitely find Lindsey at maxpotential.live. She's obviously walks the walk. She's done it, moved past fear where maybe you wanted to be comfortable, but you said, no, I'm going to go for it. And even, was terrorized and still did it. She didn't get stopped. So thank you, Lindsey. Anything in closing that you'd want to leave people with?
If I can do it with a small baby and a full-time job, you can do it. You can do hard things. I feel like that's Glennon Doyle's little phrase there, but I think it's a good reminder. And I like to share my story because I just think it's good for people to hear that, if I can, I just feel like if I could do it and go through all that, it's possible for you. It's possible for anybody. So I will leave you with that.
I remember where I was with a small baby. I was not very functional at all. So I can't believe what you've done. And I really admire you for that. So thank you. Thank you for your generosity and your courage and for inspiring. These are inspiring stories that change lives. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And thanks for having this podcast.
You're welcome.